Smile, though your heart is aching. Smile, even though it's breaking. When there are clouds in the sky, you'll get by. If you smile through your fear and sorrow, smile and maybe tomorrow, you'll see the sun come shining through.
Modern Times is a 1936 film written and directed by Charlie Chaplin. It depicts life in America at the height of the Great Depression and feels uncomfortably accurate in 2021, but I'm sure that's nothing to worry about. It has a lot to say about the industrial era and the brutality of systems that treat people like cogs in a machine. It's also about the people who don't fit into that system. The outsiders, but we'll get to them later. The conversation happening today about workers and their rights is often colored by these strange ideas we have about American history. You see, American education on our own history... Okay, I get that. And I'm just gonna go in... Whoops. Leaves something to be desired. So people go into these conversations assuming things like, well, everybody was poor during the Great Depression, but people worked hard and we got through it. And the same people who say this usually end up saying things like, you know, people were just tougher back then. Young people, so lazy. They just participation trophies. Avocado toasts, iPhone, food stamps, Starbucks. The problem is, it's just not true. And Modern Times is a wonderful time capsule that expresses this point beautifully. Modern Times follows Happy, played by Charlie Chaplin. Happy is an outsider. He's barely capable of doing his job at the Amazon warehouse he works at. It is so an Amazon warehouse. Prove me wrong, Derek. He doesn't fit in with the people around him, and he just generally doesn't get it. This character is part of an on-screen identity Chaplin called the Tramp. Tramp now usually refers to sexual promiscuity, but in the 1930s it referred to a vagrant or a beggar who goes from place to place. Do you remember when we used to dress up as hobos for Halloween and it was supposed to be like cute? Like, look at the little homeless person, how adorable. Here's Tootsie Roll. Most of the comedy comes from the Tramp bumbling through life, never quite getting it right. Today, he probably would have been classified as neurodivergent in some way, but in 1936, he was just a hapless dumbass. The story begins with a not-so-subtle depiction of workers funneling to work like sheep on a farm. There's this amazing part where the factory owner experiments on Happy with a new device that would force-feed workers while standing up, thus eliminating the lunch hour and improving productivity. Yep, you heard me right. People used to get an hour for lunch. Happy ends up having a mental breakdown, #relatable, and is released from the hospital feeling better but now unemployed. We cut to a girl referred to only as the Gamin. She's like a spunky orphan street rat. She's Aladdin, basically. Like, she literally steals a loaf of bread from a market. She's Aladdin. Gamin, which I know I'm mispronouncing, and I formally apologize to the 2 French people who watch my channel, is a French term meaning streetwise children. Her age isn't exactly stated, but she's classified as a juvenile. Her father is shot in a riot, her mother is already dead, and her 2 little sisters are removed from her home. She escapes the police despite having nowhere to go. Children did not fare well in the system during this era, and the fact that that isn't even brought up in the film is chilling. People just knew. And in case you're wondering, no, we never see her sisters again. Happy gets mistaken for a protester and goes to jail, where he accidentally ingests cocaine, accidentally stops a prison break, and accidentally finds himself in the good graces of police, earning his freedom. He then spends a very good portion of the film trying to get back into jail. Another misconception about this time is that people were more conservative, and they just totally weren't. This film was a scathing indictment of the status quo. Happy would literally rather be in jail than go back to work. He just wants a roof over his head and food on his plate, and no matter how hard he dives into his work, the system keeps spitting him out. Modern Times was hugely popular, earning $1.8 million, and that was a lot of money back then, and was one of the top grossing films of the year, in part because people identified with this struggle so much. Time and time again, the 2 attempt to find ways to make it work. He gets a job as a night watchman for a department store, and it's here that the film helps debunk another misconception about this time. that everyone was poor. It's true that a lot of people lost their jobs, but specifically, a lot of working class people lost their jobs. There was actually still a lot of abundance. That's pretty big cake. But most people couldn't afford it. The food stamps program, now called SNAP, wasn't invented until 1939. The government was still laboring under the belief that people should earn the right to not starve. And it was not working. In 1933, in New York City alone, over 100 people starved to death, most of them, unfortunately, being children. And it's estimated that 7 million people died from malnutrition during the Great Depression. That's a lot of sandwiches. There's actually a part where the two share a fantasy of what it would be like to have a home and plenty of food. They don't dream of a palace filled with riches, just a furnished house and food. In an effort to bring this dream to reality, the gamin finds an abandoned shack they start squatting in, and honestly, I felt so exposed. Because I've spent a lot of time recently trying to figure out how the hell I'm going to keep paying my rent. I have a Patreon link in the description. And I've had to consider, among other things, whether I had the chops to live off-grid in a shipping container. Both Modern Times and, Modern Times has confronted me with questions such as, do I know enough about farming to not starve to death in the winter? And would it be legal for me to buy a shed from Home Depot and, live in it? The answer to both questions is no. Entry-level job, no benefits, 3 to 5 years experience required. We're like family here. At one point, the gamin has a breakthrough. She finds a job dancing at a restaurant. She does well because it's something she's naturally good at, which we see throughout the film, and she starts making money and even finds a job as a waiter. But the police recognize her from her wanted poster, and she has to flee her job back into the streets. You see, the two characters have the same problem, poverty, but each is expressed differently. Happy can't stay in the system. She can't stay out. She wants to be left alone, and no matter how hard she tries, the system will not stop interfering. Both Happy and the gamin are outsiders. They want to find a way to fit into the system, but for various reasons, find it impossible. Proponents of the system would have us believe that outsiders, those who can't be exploited for money, are a rare, lazy minority of spoiled, witless layabouts, but the popularity of Modern Times paints a very different picture. And so does modern social media. People are desperate to leave the system in one way or another, either by getting rich or finding a way to escape out a back door. In addition to your resume, write us a letter telling us why you should pick you for this position. I heard so many times throughout my life that work gives life purpose. But how can this be true when the carrot on the end of the stick is the promise that you'll be free one day? If you just give the system 40 of your best years, that you will one day be free to live it, once you're incredibly old and broken by years of labor for a system that increasingly views you as a disposable resource. That is assuming you live to retirement, of course, and manage to save enough money on your own to pay for your nursing and elder care, and that years of dedicating yourself to the system hasn't alienated you from your children, and assuming sitting at a desk 8 hours a day hasn't done a lot of damage to your health. As long as you, by sheer force of will, have managed to avoid all of the consequences that come with exploitation, you should be good for a few years. So, please input your resume into this online form. And this is where we leave the two, out on the streets. A happy ending wouldn't have made sense. It just wasn't the vibe. The Depression was really, really bad, and no amount of puffed out chests and calls for toughness in the face of adversity could fix that. The story doesn't end on a happy note, only with a promise to continue to try their best, which may be the most relatable thing in modern times. Thank you for watching my video. My name is Magdalen Rose, and I dance for tips over at patreon.com. If you like this video, please consider heading over there and supporting the channel. Until next time, team. Bye!